interested in hearing your thoughts on that philosophy.
Well, it's not outlined as a right in the Constitution, and one of the things that I think we ought to do more of, and if you ever have watched a Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, you would regularly see me with a little red book. Most people don't know what that is. That's the city charter. When I was a legislator here in New Hampshire, it was fairly regular, a normal thing to see legislators with the state constitution. And why we shouldn't be talking about the Constitution is beyond me. It is the book that guides our country. And as an alderman, I tell people this. I try to relate it to what I've done as a mayor. I have the book at every meeting to decide if we are focusing as a government on what we're supposed to be according to the city charter. There's no reason we shouldn't be doing the same thing with the Constitution. Now, I'd like to make sure that people have affordable access to health care. But there are things that we can do without law and regulation to foster an environment where your access is immediate, affordable, and the best in the world. We already have the best health care in the world. I don't think that's debatable. I think most people, regardless of party affiliation, agree with that. But I consistently hear from members of both parties that affordability is an issue, whether you're an individual or a business owner, or whether you just can't access it. So that's something that I think we can address. But I don't believe that it should be mandated by the federal government. And I would not, and that's why I signed this pledge, because it's serious to me. I'm not going to mandate it. I don't believe that that's the appropriate way to provide you health care. Not to mention, we have a debt and a deficit today. Does anybody have an idea what the debt is for our current fiscal year?
1.4 trillion.
Yeah, I mean, it's with a T, trillion. Over $12 trillion. And our existing deficit has a T after it, too. I mean, we've got to get out of that problem. I mean, you know, Manchester, by law, I got to have a balanced budget. I mean, this federal government is not considering the fact that we should have a balanced budget approach to how your money is spent. And just after the election on Tuesday, I'm still hearing from the White House. And I'd be curious to know what our representatives, all of them, think about spending reductions, debt reduction. I mean, shouldn't creating jobs, strengthening our economy, and reducing our debt and deficit be our #1 priorities? Those should be our top priorities.
How do you see yourself, or what roles or actions do you see yourself playing to help influence this kind of budgeting in order to reduce our taxes?
Yeah, I use this quick phrase. I say freeze, cap, and cut. Let's first of all freeze the spending right now. If I were a member of Congress today, and again, one of the things that I think Congress needs is just regular, average, everyday people trying to solve the problems. Let's freeze spending, #1. Let's just freeze it. Just stop it. You got to stop the bleeding that's going on. Instead, the Senate is considering raising the debt ceiling by $1.9 trillion. So they still don't get it. And that news came out after Tuesday's election. I would then do a review, top to bottom, of every federal organization. I am sure there's a little bit of waste somewhere in the federal budget. I think that whether you're independent, Democrat, or Republican, you probably agree with that statement. Yes. So let's do a top-to-bottom review of every department. I mean, people ask me, do you support auditing the Fed? Of course I do. I think we should audit everything. Audit every department that spends your money. And then, depending on the department and the responsibility, because I like to prioritize, and I think we should as a nation prioritize. We should cut appropriately, and probably larger cuts in some areas than in other areas. I mean, again, when you look at your household budget, do you cut everything equally across the board? You can't call your mortgage company up and say, I'm cutting your payment to 10%. But you can make decisions within your entire budget on how you spend the resources that you have. And I hear this term, well, discretionary spending versus non-discretionary. Everything is discretionary, people. You know, when I looked at the city budgets for Manchester, $280 million, it's all discretionary. How you decide to spend that money is up to you. Now, people do expect certain levels of service. People expect that they have safe streets. People expect that the garbage is going to get picked up. People expect that the roads are going to be plowed. Then you have to determine what is the cost associated with those services. And you figure out the best way to have the most efficient manner to get those things done. I'm not even sure that members of Congress know the salary line item budget for the federal government. I mean, when I was mayor, I could tell you for every department what the salary line item is. I could tell you, we spend $15 million a year in Manchester on health insurance costs alone. We're self-insured. I know how to reduce that cost. And actually, I'll get into one of the things that we're doing that we implemented last year that is started. That's actually a success. But zero-based budgeting is very simple. What used to happen in budgets, and what happens in most budgets, is you take the previous year budget and you add to it. You say, that's my budget request. Zero-based budgeting is you throw that budget away as if it never existed, and you build from the ground up the responsibilities that you are that are governed by your governing body to provide. They don't always have to be the same responsibilities year in and year out. But it's a big mistake that is made, and that's why the size of government, the scope of government expands each and every year. So when I went into zero-based budgeting my first year, the department heads were not exactly thrilled about it. I did put in the budget process, which is a little, I would recommend this to any government official. You obviously have a computer-based system where you're entering your budget in. Ours in Manchester was called HTE. I had, at the bottom of each page, you had to justify every expenditure over $2,000, or you couldn't get to the next page in the budget. Now, they didn't like that. The budget process for them was longer, required more time. But guess what? Taxpayers appreciated it. And we were able to find pots of money in different departments that didn't have any purpose. And we reduced those things. We cut those things out of the budget. People say, you know, where are you going to cut? Believe me, there are places you can cut. There are things you can do to be more efficient. There are more competitive approaches to providing services that either private sector provides or the public sector provides. And the zero-based budgeting process, I think, taught the department heads, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and the taxpayers a very strong lesson that you can restrict the amount of money that you spend. But I will tell you, cutting taxes is difficult. It's not easy. The easy way out is to raise taxes. Anybody can do it. You can raise taxes. All you have to do is say, we need more money. You can always get the votes for that. The hard work is trying to cut taxes, trying to cut spending, and provide that level of service that you've always provided. That's the challenge. That's difficult. But that's what drove me as a mayor. I enjoyed finding ways to do things cheaper and quicker and better. And I think by extension, the taxpayers appreciate it. But that's what government is. Government is